Good morning, Asia. Good evening, America. You're watching World DNA with me, Jyotsna Kumar.
And I'm Samiksha Srivastava. It's a packed lineup this morning. A new he has said that he's expected to discuss the plans with Trump in the coming days.
Also on the show today, President Donald Trump has suggested that Democratic lawmakers who urge service members and intelligence officials to disobey illegal orders should be put to death. Now, this has sparked an outcry among Democrats on Capitol Hill that the president was seeking to incite violence. We'll, of course, get you all the details on that story on the show. Let's begin with the headlines.
Talks reopen at the UN Climate Summit hours after a fire disrupted COP30 proceedings, with authorities confirming the Balen venue is again safe following roof damage and an emergency evacuation.
Five people killed and 3 others wounded in a Russian strike on Zaporizhzhia city in southern Ukraine. Moscow further claims to have captured Kupiansk, a claim Ukraine denies.
Donald Trump suggests Democratic lawmakers who urge military to refuse illegal orders could be executed, calling them traitors and accusing them of seditious behavior. Democrats call his comments wild.
You're a trooper in Army rank. We know you are.
Trump administration denies South Africa's announcement that the United States has ended a boycott of G20 summit in Johannesburg, saying no U.S. official will take part in the talks.
A U.S. federal judge rules that President Trump's deployment of thousands of National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. is unlawful and even orders it to end, but stays the order for 21 days to allow an appeal.
Gaza health authorities say fresh Israeli strikes killed 5 people as ceasefire mediator Qatar warns the renewed attacks threaten to undermine fragile weeks-long truce between Israel and Hamas.
A UK public inquiry finds that about 23,000 COVID-19 deaths in England could have been prevented if the first lockdown had come earlier. Report even criticizes Boris Johnson's government for lack of urgency and toxic culture at the top.
Four staff members of Delhi's St. Columbia school suspended after an FIR filed against them in connection with the alleged suicide of a class 10th student who accused them of mental harassment.
Asian tech markets tumbled on Friday as AI bubble fears rattled investors. Japan's Nikkei and Korea's Kospi slid sharply, while Samsung, SK Hynix, and Hynix and SoftBank posted steep losses despite Nvidia's strong earnings.
And U.S. President Donald Trump ignited a firestorm today.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Senator Alyssa Slotkin.
Senator Mark Kelly.
Representative Chris DeLuzio.
Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander.
Representative Chrissy Houlihan.
Congressman Jason Crow. I was a captain in the United States Navy.
Former CIA officer.
Former Navy.
Former paratrooper and Army Ranger.
Former intelligence.
We know you are under enormous stress and pressure right now.
The lawmakers did not specify which orders they were referring to. However, Trump has deployed the National Guard to multiple U.S. cities, often against local officials' wishes to curb alleged rampant unrest in the region.
Abroad, he has ordered strikes on alleged drug smuggling vessels in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific, resulting in over 80 deaths.
President Donald Trump even raised on Truth Social the possibility of the death penalty for 6 Democratic lawmakers who urged the military to refuse orders from the administration. He termed them traitors and accused them of sedition.
Slamming Trump's death threats against her and other lawmakers, Michigan Senator and former CIA officer Alyssa Slotkin, in a video posted, she refuses to be intimidated and would continue to speak up for her country.
This is about who we are as Americans and how we're going to engage with people who we disagree with. I would hope that people of and I'm not going to be forced away from speaking up on behalf of my country. I swore an oath to the Constitution many times, most recently less than a year ago as a senator. To the Constitution, not to any one man, not to any one president.
Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer condemned Donald Trump's call for execution of Democratic lawmakers, calling it a deadly serious threat.
The last 41 days have exposed the depths of Donald Trump's cruelty. He shut the government down longer than any president in American history, took innocent kids, veterans, federal workers as hostages, political hostages, all because he refuses to do anything to fix the healthcare crisis, and instead keeps pushing policies that will cut people's coverage even more.
The White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt later walked back Trump's suggestion saying that the president did not want to see members of Congress executed. She lashed out at the lawmakers, asking why isn't anyone talking about what the members of Congress who put out a video are doing to encourage and incite violence.
You have sitting members of the United States Congress who conspired together to orchestrate a video message to members of the United States military, to active duty service members, to members of the national security apparatus, encouraging them to defy the president's lawful orders. The sanctity of our military rests on the chain of command. And if that chain of command is broken, it can lead to people getting killed. It can lead to chaos. And that's what these members of Congress who swore an oath to abide by the Constitution are essentially encouraging.
Shifting focus then, the highly anticipated meet between President Donald Trump and New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani finally has a date.
Now, both leaders will be meeting on Friday, as confirmed by Trump himself. In a post on social media, Trump said he has agreed to Mamdani's request for a meeting, highlighting that it will take place at the Oval Office on Friday.
Mamdani, for his part, has been critical of the Trump administration's policies, which includes crackdown on immigrants and U.S. support for Israel during the Gaza war. Mamdani told reporters that his team had reached out to the White House to arrange a meet between the two. The New York mayor also held a media availability to discuss the challenges ahead, including a planned meet with President Trump.
I know that for tens of thousands of New Yorkers, this meeting is between two very different candidates who they voted for the same reason. They wanted a leader who would take on the cost of living crisis that makes it impossible for working people to afford living in this city. My team reached out to the White House to set up this meeting because I will work with anyone to make life more affordable for the more than 8.5 million people who call this city home.
Now, the U.S. president had previously threatened to cut funding for New York if Mamdani won the city's mayoral race. However, after the young leader's historic victory surpassing 1 million votes, Trump, while still labeling Mamdani a communist, did change his tone about the Democrat leader and warmed up to the prospect of a meeting with him.
White House press secretary said that President Trump would meet with New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani at the Oval Office. However, she declined to outline what the president hoped to hear from him.
Caroline, is there anything that Mayor-elect Mamdani could say tomorrow that would ease the president's concerns about his future leadership in New York?
Look, I don't want to speak for the president or get ahead of this meeting that we are currently working on tomorrow. As you saw, the president put out a statement tomorrow that the mayor-elect will be coming to the Oval Office, and so our teams are arranging those details. I won't get into the president's thinking on it. I think you'll all hear from him directly.
Moments after NYC mayoral results were announced on 5th of November, Trump had declared that America has lost a bit of serenity with Mamdani's win. Mamdani, who calls himself a socialist Democrat, has also repeatedly attacked Trump during his election campaign and even took a dig at the president in his victory speech. Zohran Mamdani defeated Republican candidate Curtis Sliwa and former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was backed by Trump. Now, the mayor-elect will take charge just after midnight on 1st of January next year, as required by city law. The White House has confirmed that the U.S. won't be participating in the official talks at the G20 summit in South Africa this weekend.
Well, U.S. Press Secretary has expressed disappointment with South African President Cyril Ramaphosa's comments, saying that the U.S. does not appreciate this language.
The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. The ambassador or the representative of the embassy in South Africa is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
A response from White House comes following a statement by President Cyril Ramaphosa that South Africa is in talks with the U.S. about potentially reversing the Trump administration's decision to boycott the G20 summit in Johannesburg. He had said that the discussions are ongoing.
We have received notice from the United States, a notice which we are still in discussions with them over, about a change of mind about participating in one shape, form, or other in the summit. So the discussions are still ongoing.
Earlier, President Trump had announced that his administration would boycott the two-day meeting over accusations that South Africa is violently persecuting white minority farmers, an allegation that South Africa strongly rejects. However, White House said that a representative from the U.S. Embassy will attend the formal handover ceremony that would mark the transfer of the G20 presidency from South Africa to the U.S. However, following the White House denial of Ramaphosa's statement, South Africa's president's spokesman wrote on social media that the president would not hand over the G20 presidency to an acting U.S. ambassador.
Furthermore, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has departed for Johannesburg for a two-day state visit, during which he will be attending the G20 summit. According to India's Ministry of External Affairs, PM Modi will put forth India's perspectives on the G20 agenda and is expected to speak in all three sessions of the summit.
Parliament will take leave, and thereafter the meeting will proceed in a closed session, which was constructed.
Now, world leaders have started arriving in South Africa for the summit. Among those who arrived on Thursday were Chinese Premier Li Jiang and his delegation and Malaysia's Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. G20 summit is set to kick off in Johannesburg on November 22nd and the 23rd, which would mark a historic first for the African continent. Hosted under the theme Solidarity, Equality, Sustainability, the event will tackle pressing global issues like climate change, debt relief, energy transition, and even AI governance.
In other developments, South Africa and the EU signed a landmark deal on critical minerals, vowing to defend multilateralism ahead of the G20 summit. The partnership, hailed as unprecedented by President Cyril Ramaphosa, aims to boost South Africa's mineral processing and value addition capability.
This summit, and he said discussions are ongoing. Despite the announcement coming at the 11th hour, Ramaphosa welcomed the decision, adding that it was a positive sign and that boycott politics do not work. However, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt clarified that the United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa, and she further went on to criticize Ramaphosa, saying he was running his mouth. The letter that was sent from the American Embassy to South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation stated that the U.S. delegations attending the summit will be led by U.S. Chargé d'Affaires in Pretoria, and they will participate in G20 presidency handover ceremony as part of the closing session on November 23rd. Vincent Magwena, who's the spokesperson for South Africa's presidency, on X wrote, and I quote, "The president will not hand over to Chargé d'Affaires," close quote, meaning President Ramaphosa will not hand over G20 presidency to a lower level official.
And on to the latest on Russia-Ukraine war. A strike by the Russian forces on the city of Zaporizhia, that is in southern Ukraine, has killed 5 people and wounded 3 others.
Emergency officials say that the number of victims could rise as crews work through debris. The strike is one of several major attacks reported across Ukraine for the past 48 hours.
Russia further claimed a significant battlefield gain in east, saying that its troops have taken full control of the city of Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. It was on Thursday that President Vladimir Putin even visited the command post of Russia's West military grouping, where he met with top commanders, including Chief of the General Staff, and briefed Putin on operations in Donetsk and Kharkiv, claiming Russian troops had not only taken Kupiansk but were also advancing around the Oskil River.
Russian Defense Ministry also released a new video that it says was filmed in the southern district of Pokrovsk. Now, the video shows Russian soldiers moving through deserted streets, lined with scorched apartment buildings and shattered windows.
The chief of the General Staff said that the Russian force now controls 70% of Pokrovsk and more than 80% of Vovchansk.
And during the meeting, Putin described Ukraine's leadership as an organized crime syndicate. Listen to this.
Что такое политическое руководство Украины, мы уже понимаем.
We already understand what Ukraine's political leadership is. It's no longer a political leadership. Since March of last year, a group of individuals, this criminal group, this organized crime syndicate, has usurped power and, under the pretext of continuing the war with Russia, is holding on to that power in Ukraine for the purpose of personal enrichment.
И под предлогом необходимости продолжения войны с Россией.
His comments referenced Ukrainian President Zelensky's recent dismissal of 2 senior officials. That is after investigators uncovered a corruption scheme which involved roughly $100 million allegedly embezzled from the energy sector. WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani has shared us details on the phone.
Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, announced that the U.S. engaged both Russia and Ukraine equally for more than a month in crafting a proposed peace deal. Key U.S. figures, including Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Marco Rubio, held negotiations with intermediaries from both sides. The draft envisioned by the U.S. has been delivered to Ukraine, which says will review it with an eye towards ending the conflict in a, quote, worthy way. Meanwhile, Leavitt warned that President Trump is, quote, increasingly frustrated with both parties' reluctance to commit.
Moving on, Japan's ties with China have plunged to their lowest in years.
And this following Japan Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's remarks this month about Taiwan, the democratically governed island that China claims as its own territory.
China has said that a trilateral meeting of culture ministers with Japan and South Korea, which was scheduled for this month, is tough given the escalating diplomatic dispute with Tokyo over Taiwan. South Korea's culture ministry has said that China has postponed the three-way meet scheduled for November.
The Japanese leader's blatant and extremely wrong remarks
to intensify. In fact, China has shown its displeasure with steps to inflict pain on Japan after Takaichi's response. It ranges from halt on imports of its seafood and even cancellations of meetings and cultural events.
Tensions flared up between the two countries after Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi said this month that a Chinese attack on Taiwan threatening Japan's survival could trigger a military response.
Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has showed support for Japan, and that is after China's suspension of Japanese seafood imports in an escalating dispute. In fact, in pictures on his social media feed, Lai can be seen eating a sushi lunch in addition to reinstating a ban on Japanese marine produce. China has boycotted travel to Japan and has even threatened stern countermeasures.
Now, the ongoing diplomatic spat between Beijing and Tokyo has left a question mark for the citizens if they can still connect for business, food, or cultural exchange. While some Japanese restaurant owners in China lament flare-up in diplomatic tensions, Japanese residents remain unfazed.
If possible, I hope diplomats in Japan and China can work together to improve the situation. I hope that the people of China and Japan will be able to enjoy the same foods without fighting each other.
If they want to eat it, they can come here. There's really no need to eat it in China.
Well, Beijing had only recently partially eased restrictions on Japanese seafood that had been imposed due to Tokyo's decision 2 years ago, that is, to release treated wastewater from its Fukushima power plant, the site of a 2011 nuclear meltdown.
Now, that followed a massive earthquake and a tsunami. Now, earlier, Japan issued a safety advisory for its citizens in China, urging them to avoid crowded places and take extra precautions following the diplomatic clash over Takaichi's comments. Now, Takaichi's remarks were widely seen as a departure from Tokyo's long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity on Taiwan.
Beijing views democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and has not ruled out the use of force to take control of the island, while Taiwan's government rejects Beijing's claims and says that only the island's people can decide their future.
All right, now it's time for a very short break on World in It. Don't go anywhere. On the other side, Nepal is again on edge for the second straight day. Tensions gripped Bara district bordering India as Gen Z protesters return to the streets of Simara, clashing with police. We'll get you all the details on the story on the other side.
Also coming up on World DNA, tussle between UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has escalated. Starmer has challenged the Reform UK leader over accusations made by a British daily. We'll get you more on that after we come back.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
Africa hosts the G20 for the first time, and Johannesburg becomes the world's power stage. 42 countries will gather and participate for G20 Leaders Summit. 20 G20 members, excluding the United States, 16 guest countries, and 6 countries representing regional economic communities in Africa, the Caribbean, and the East Asia. WION will bring you all the latest developments from G20 Leaders Summit from Johannesburg, South Africa.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Thanks for staying tuned. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna and myself, Samiksha. Here's a quick check of the headlines we're tracking this up.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaves for Johannesburg to attend the 20th G20 summit, which South African President Cyril Ramaphosa hosts this weekend.
Trump administration denies South Africa's announcement that the US has ended a boycott of G20 summit in Johannesburg, saying no US official will take part in the talks.
Russian army claims to have again captured the Ukrainian city of Kupiansk a key Kiev bastion in the eastern Kharkiv region where Russia's soldiers have been steadily advancing.
Donald Trump suggests that Democratic lawmakers who urged military to refuse illegal orders could be executed, calling them traitors and accusing them of seditious behavior. Democrats call his comments wild.
Gaza's health authorities says fresh Israeli airstrikes kill 5 people as ceasefire mediator Qatar warns a renewed attacks threaten to undermine fragile weeks-long truce between Israel and Hamas.
A UK public inquiry finds that about 23,000 COVID-19 deaths in England could have been prevented if the first lockdown had come earlier. Report criticizes Boris Johnson's government for lack of urgency and toxic culture at the top.
Protesters march in Mexico City against President Claudia Sheinbaum's government, demanding action on insecurity, corruption, and improvements in education, healthcare, and wages.
Four staff members of Delhi's St. Columbus School suspended after an FIR filed against them in connection with alleged suicide of a Class 10 student who accused them of mental harassment.
Asian tech markets tumbled on Friday as AI bubble fears rattled investors. Japan's Nikkei and Korea's Kospi slid sharply while Samsung, SK Hynix and SoftBank posted steep losses despite Nvidia's strong earnings. Nepal is on edge again. Another Gen Z uprising, another political flashpoint has emerged this time. The spark is the interim government's failure to act against leaders accused of inciting violence.
In fact, for the second straight day, tensions gripped Bara district bordering India. Gen Z protesters returned to the streets of Simara, clashing with police from early morning. Protesters say that the government failed to act against CP and UML leaders who visited the district last evening for a public event. Protesters allege that leaders have been involved in disturbing the peaceful environment.
In response, police fired tear gas near Samara Airport. The protesters say police ignored their complaint and shielded those involved in Wednesday's violence. Gen Z leader Sudan Gurung has warned of nationwide protests and no elections unless action is taken over last September's crackdown that killed 76 young Nepalis. The message is clear: no justice, no polls.
Interim Prime Minister Sushila Karki has called for calm and has warned parties resisting to join polls. In a statement, she said that any party refusing to register or boycotting elections will be seen as choosing disorder over democracy. But the big question is, can Nepal even hold elections on 5th of March next year? In this atmosphere is a question while Interim Prime Minister Karki has told security agencies to maintain peace with restraint and ensure a fear-free space for all political actors.
Now, the ground reality tells a different story. Nepal seems to be drifting again into uncertainty. Major parties are reluctant to commit to elections. citing security concerns and demanding reinstatement of the parliament. And the Gen Z movement is fueling a louder demand. They're saying it's time for the old guard to go.
And inside the big parties, pressure has only been building for the exit of Sher Bahadur Deoba, KP Sharma Oli and even Pushp Kamal Dahel, Prachandal, with leaders being blamed for economic stagnation, unemployment and rampant corruption in the country.
Now, at the same time, nearly 30 new political parties, many led by Gen Z groups, and a few established political figures have applied for registration. And yet another faction wants the monarchy back, seizing the moment as frustration grows. The country for the last 1 year has seen massive pro-monarchy protests. Everyone wants a stake in the power vacuum.
Nepal is still in political transition phase after the September uprising that toppled KP Sharma Oli and unrest that left as many as 76 people dead. And now the country stands at crossroads once again, with Nepal's political landscape that is still volatile, scarred by deep public distrust in the established parties. There's a restless youth, a shaken state and a race towards 2026 with no certainty in sight. Well, the tussle between UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has escalated.
Now, with racism allegations at the center of this tussle, during a parliamentary session on Wednesday, Starmer challenged the Reform UK leader and asked if he would respond to racist accusations made by a British daily. Listen to this.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about dog whistle. Last week, his leader said he didn't have time to condemn the racist comments of his fellow MP for Runcorn. He also said he didn't have time to condemn his party calling children in care evil. He didn't have time. I wonder if you can ask his leader next door to him whether he's got time for his explanation for the stories in today's papers.
The row reached Parliament after a report by The Guardian claimed that Farage had made racist and anti-Semitic comment during his school days. The allegations surfaced as part of a long report which cites accounts from several contemporaries of the far-right leader. Reform UK Party has denied all these accusations and says that there is no corroborating evidence presented in the report. Farage individually has not responded to these allegations.
But I think we all know, without living in a country where we're paying a lot of people.
Argentina's capital witnessed a fresh protest against President Javier Milei's labor reforms.
Milei has undertaken a sweeping overhaul of policies and even austerity measures in an effort to curb Argentina's inflation.
We believe it is essential to confront the Trump government that is now ruling Argentina. We retirees demand a national strike and a general strike from the CGT and the CTA because only through a united struggle, workers, unemployed, retirees, will we be able to demolish this policy of surrender, which we consider the worst in Argentina's history.
Demoler esta política de entrega.
Well, the world waited for the clearest look at our newest interstellar visitor.
NASA promised sharp answers and delivered blurred shadows. And now netizens want to know, what is Dry Atlas and what is NASA hiding? Here's a report for more on this. Take a look.
NASA's big reveal has turned into a big backlash. After weeks of hype, the agency finally released these images of 3I Atlas only for the world to see a smudged, blurry object drifting through space like a sensor bar slapped across the cosmos. For a mystery object that zipped through space at nearly 30,000 miles per hour, the data leaves much to be desired.
Quite possibly, we can't say this for sure, but the likelihood is it came from a solar system older than our own solar system itself, which gives me goosebumps to think about, frankly, because that means the 3I Atlas is not just a window into another solar system, it's a window into the deep past, and so deep in the past that it predates even the formation of our Earth and our Sun.
And within minutes, the internet erupted. A cover-up, some users shouted. A joke? Others called it. But behind the fury lies a deeper question. Why is an interstellar object still a mystery after coming this close to our solar system? From the moment 3I Atlas was first spotted in July 2025, astronomers worldwide scrambled their instruments for a closer look. NASA mobilized 12 spacecraft, including Mars orbiters and solar probes, all trained on the comet as it passed near Mars and zipped close to the Sun. But the images? Blurred and grainy. Netizens accused NASA of hiding clear footage, fanning wild theories that 3I Atlas is no ordinary comet, but possibly alien technology or something more sinister. But the U.S. Space Agency insists it is nothing more than a comet.
I'd like to address the rumors right at the beginning. I think it's important that we talk about that. This object is a comet. It looks and behaves like a comet and all evidence points to it being a comet. But this one came from outside the solar system, which makes it fascinating, exciting, and scientifically very important. This is only the third interstellar object like this that humanity has ever found.
India is the latest to join the hunt to unravel the mysteries of this cosmic object. India's space agency, ISRO, revealed this image captured by Physical Research Laboratory's telescope at Mount Abu. The image shows glowing envelope of gas and dust surrounding the comet's nucleus. Scientists admit the comet is a puzzle. It glows brightly with a faint tail, yet is cloaked in dust that obscures its true size, possibly a few hundred meters to kilometers wide. Chemical analyses show an unexpected nickel signature, unusual even for interstellar objects. The debate rages. Is it a natural space rock or a relic of extraterrestrial origins? Bureau report, WION The World is one.
Moscow's crude oil shipments plunged significantly in November.
And this as the US sanctions on Russian oil giants Rosneft and Lukoil kicked in on Friday. This is according to data from global real-time data and analytics firm Kepler.
Kepler reports that between November 1st and 19th, Russia exported 706,000 billion barrels per day, or BPD, of crude to China. Now, that is a 39% plunge from October. Moscow's exports to Turkey fell 59% to 136,000 BPD this month. Russian oil flows to India have plunged significantly this month. They fell from 1.89 million BPD in October to an estimated 948,000 BPD so far this month. That is a 50% slump.
US sanctions on two Russian oil giants have choked Russian oil supply. Rosneft plans to pay the lowest interim dividends since the pandemic in 2020. This is due to lower crude prices, a stronger ruble, and US sanctions as well. In October, the US Treasury Department sanctioned Rosneft and Lukoil, and the ban came into effect on Friday. The US has also warned that secondary penalties are being considered as of now. According to the latest data from Kepler, the risk is the main reason, which is why China, Turkey, and India have cut back on Russian crude oil this month.
Earlier this week, President Trump said he will back a Senate-proposed bill to sanction Russia's trading partners. And that was the president's strongest indication of another push to strangle Moscow's funding. The bill would allow Trump to impose tariffs of up to 500% on countries that buy Russian oil. And now that move especially targets major consumers of Russian energy, such as Turkey, India, and China.
They're passing legislation, or the Republicans are putting in legislation that very tough. It's sanctioning, etc., on any country doing business with Russia. They may add Iran to that, as you know. I suggested it. So any country that does business with Russia will be very severely sanctioned. We may add Iran to the formula, yeah.
Now, a new study has revealed a significant shift when it comes to research and patents in the field of remote sensing.
And China now dominates a field that's critical for everything from autonomous mobility to climate forecasts and defense systems.
Remote sensing, or the science of collecting data from sensors on drones, aircraft, and satellites, used to be a space that the US controlled almost completely. In fact, back in 1990s, American universities and even NASA produced almost 90% of all research papers in this field. China's contribution was nearly zero. However, a new analysis by New York University shows a dramatic reversal. By 2023, China was responsible for nearly half of global publications in remote sensing. While the US share had fallen to under 10%, the study that was published in the journal Geomatics tracked over 126,000 research papers from more than 70 journals that covered 6 decades of data.
Now, key findings from the study reveal that China leads remote sensing research with 47% of global output, while US share has dropped from 88 to 9%. Now, Chinese funding agencies back over 50% of new research in the subject, whereas NASA and the U.S. National Science Foundation now sit in the 7th and 8th place. The study also reveals that China holds the top 6 global funding institutions. The country also leads in remote sensing patents filed worldwide.
The study points to one major factor behind the shift, and that is massive, consistent government funding. China's strategic programs have poured money into space, laser imaging, AI-driven mapping, and even quantum remote sensing that allows researchers to achieve levels of precision unthinkable almost a decade ago. Also, the World Report warns that US investment in the field has shrunk sharply, with no dedicated government department for cartography or even geodata, and overall science funding now facing cuts.
Since President Donald Trump took office for the second time, he has cut funding across academic disciplines and researches. The report also notes that remote sensing output has exploded globally, from just a dozen papers a year in the 1960s to over 13,000 per year today.
Mr. President.
Over to Formula One now. Lando Norris is closing in on a major milestone for McLaren.
The 26-year-old British driver will be David Coulthard as the longest-serving driver in team's history.
And Norris is also leading the Formula One World Championship as the season enters its final stretch. Norris will make his 150th career start at the Las Vegas Grand Prix, an achievement he has worked towards for 7 seasons. The British driver has been a key part of McLaren's success, helping secure 2 consecutive Constructors' Championship. With 3 races left, he holds a 24-point lead over teammate Oscar Piastri, while Max Verstappen sits 49 points back.
This season, Norris and Piastri have traded the driver standings lead, pushing each other to the consistent performances. Las Vegas will then test them on Quest Street circuit with high temperatures and long streets, challenging both car and the driver.
You don't often step back and go, oh, I'm in Formula One, I'm fighting for the championship, I'm traveling the world. Like you forget those things sometimes just because your mind is so buried in terms of what you're trying to achieve and trying to achieve it. So yeah, but the moments, when you get reminded of it or you do take a step back, it's pretty insane.
Well, more than 400 original puppets, props and personal items from the Jim Henson Company are going on the auction block to mark the 70th anniversary.
Now, the auction includes iconic pieces from the Fraggle Rock, the Dark Crystal, and other popular productions. Know more about it in our next story. Take a look.
I think the strongest things in the sale that have a lot of cultural representation are the Fraggles from Fraggle Rock, because that show is so iconic. They're the best puppets in the sale because you instantly recognize that they are made by the Henson Company. They have those big sort of ping pong ball eyes that are unmistakable as coming from the Jim Henson world.
All right, with that, we call a wrap to World DNA for today. But don't go anywhere. News and updates will be following on the other side of this very short break. You're watching Beyond World One. Stay tuned.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.